Hi loves, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you guys how to make this beautiful crop top and knicker. It is very simple. If this is what you're interested in learning, please keep on watching. And if you are yet to hit on the subscribe button, please subscribe and let's get started. Now, I'll be making use of 3 yards of Ankara print for this tutorial. I won't even finish it, so I'm just making use of 3 yards. So whatever it's remaining, I'm going to keep it aside. So I'll be folding my fabric into two. Now, here are the measurements we are going to be needing. We are going to be needing the waist measurement of 31 inches, the hip measurement of 36, crotch depth 9 inches, and then thigh is 25. Now, to get your crotch depth, you're going to have to divide your hip circumference by 4. Okay. Now that I've folded my fabric into two, I'm going to, from the top of my fabric, come down by 1 inch for the baseline, and then from the center fold of my fabric, I'm going to come in by 1 inch as well, and then connect it vertically just like this, and then horizontally just like this. So this horizontal line is serving as the waist point. Now from this waist point, I'm going to place my tape and mark down to the crotch depth line, 9 inches, and then next is the length of the knicker, 14 inches. Now after that, I'm going to draw my lines across, and next thing I want to do is on the crotch line, I'm going to come in by 9 inches as well. Okay, so I'll mark out 9 inches on the crotch line again, and then do the same thing on the waist line, and then I'll connect these points together. Remember, this 9 inches is from hip circumference divided by 4. Okay, now guys, on the crotch line, I'll input my thigh measurement divided by 2, 12.5 inches, and then come up by 1.5 inches to connect. Okay, you can equally come out using 1 inch, or rather this 1.5 inches, but please do not exceed 1.5 inches to avoid any form of gaping around this region. Okay, now guys, I'm going to divide this 12.5 inches into two to find the middle of my knicker, and what I have there was 6.25. So I'm going to mark it out on the waist, the crotch line, and then the length of the knicker, and then connect these lines together just like this. After that, I'll move over to the waist and then divide my waist circumference by 4, and then I'll place it on the crotch line like this, and then take it backward and mark out 8 inches because I have 7.75 after dividing my waist, but I need his allowance of half an inch. Okay, so on the crotch line again, come up by 1.5 inches for the hip points, and then connect it into the waist. Now after this, I'll move over to the length of my knicker. And remember that after dividing my thigh by 2, I had 6.25 inches. Now, because this did not extend to the knee, I'm going to minus 0.25, okay, from 6.25. So what I'll place there is 6 inches on both sides. So I went ahead to mark it out and then connected the points together. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to go over to the length of the knicker and I'll go down using 1 inch. Now this 1 inch is going to serve as the hemming allowance of my knicker. So I would mark it out and then connect it together. After this, next thing I'm going to do now is from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, okay? And then connect it to the waistline again, just like this. So this will help your trouser to stay really firm on the stomach. Okay, now if you have a tummy, you can actually ignore this, and then I will add half an inch seam allowance, and you guys, we are going to cut this out. Remember, we have not added any seam allowance on this knicker, so all of our seam allowance we enter the back. So stay tuned. Now guys, you can see I am done cutting out the front, so we are moving over to the back. Now I've folded my fabric into two again, and to place the fronts on the pieces, I'm going to go down a little using 2 inches, as you can see. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure that I mark out the starting point, which is the waist point. That is what you can see me trying to outline. And afterwards, what I'm going to do is from this waistline, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. You can actually use 1.5 inches and then connect it back to the waist line. So this is because of the 1 inch that we came down on the front. Okay, so you are going to replace that to the back, as you can see. And then after that, what I'm going to do is connect just like this, and then I'll move over to the crotch extension. Okay, so you can see I've marked out the crotch line and the length of the knicker. Now from the crotch line, I'm going to go down by half an inch for the back crotch depth. Okay, now after that, what I'm going to do next is from the front crotch, I'm going to come out by 2.5 inches just like this. Okay, I'm going to take 2.5 inches from the crotch of the front. So as you can see, I'm trying to mark it out. And for the extension, I'm equally going to mark 2.5 inches. Now on the length of the knicker, I'm going to use 2 inches. Okay, and then I'll connect these points together. Okay, now initially I marked 2.5 inches, but I reduced this because I made a mistake. I'm supposed to use 2 inches right there. So I'm going to connect just like this before I would come out by 1.5 inches, so that I'll be able to connect my crotch depth properly well. Okay, now the same thing I did for the front, I repeated it. Now this helps you to connect your crotch properly well, so you won't go that deep. Okay, so guys, as you can see, we are done. I'm going to equally input half an inch for the sewing allowance on the waists, and you guys, I will connect this together and then we cut it out. Now remember, we are not using any form of dart for this knicker. If you want to make use of that, you can actually make use of your nipple to nipple measurement to do that. Okay, but for this one, we are not making use of that. So I'll simply go ahead and cut my back. So guys, as you can see, I am done cutting this out. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and indicate the back and the front, because this fabric is kind of the same on the front and the back. Okay, so now we have the back and the front knicker. So I'm going to remove the back and we work on the front because we need a pocket for this front. So from the waist of my knicker, I'm going to come down by 6 inches. That is how deep I want my pocket. And from the side, I'm going to go in by half an inch. And then from the upper part on the waistline, I'm going to come in by 1.5 inches, and I'll connect this 1.5 inches to the half an inch. Okay, so as you can see, I've connected them together. Now I'm going to bring in another fabric. So when you bring in this fabric, go ahead and fold it into four. Okay, so I already have this fabric, that's why you didn't see when I was folding them. So I have these pieces of fabric that I had initially, so, and they are in four pieces, and that is what I'm using to cut out the pocket. So the length is going to be in the same length with the crotch depth. Okay, but I went ahead to add half an inch for stitching allowance. So I'm going to trim up the upper part and then also trim up the side. Now the side is going to end on the on the crease line, which is the middle line that I have right there, and I also added half an inch for stitching allowance. Now I'm trying to cut out the hip. Okay, now this is what we have, and next thing I'm going to do is use my scissors to indicate the side and the upper parts. This is only to help me differentiate the side from the hip side. Okay, so I went ahead to use one notch for the side and two notches for the upper part. Now guys, remember we have two pieces for our pocket, bag and the filler. Now I've gone ahead to remove two pieces, and the remaining two pieces I'm using it to cut out my pocket opening. So you guys, you can see I have my pocket filler and the pocket bag. Okay, so when you place it together, this is how it should look like. As you can see, so there is where to place your hand. So guys, we are done cutting out the knicker. We are moving over to the top. Now guys, the top is very simple. It is just a simple free top. So here are the measurements we are going to be using. I'm going to be using shoulder of 13 inches, bust of 34 inches, waist of 31 inches, armhole of 18 inches, and then the length of the top 14 inches. Now first fold your fabric into two and mark out the starting line, which is the shoulder line. Now from the center fold, go ahead and divide your shoulder into two, mark it out, plus half an inch for stitching the armhole together. Now from this shoulder point, go down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and then come down for your chest line. So to get your chest line, you divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now, after that, I'm going to take in my neck width and the neck depth, which I'm using 3 by 3 inches. Okay, so you know that this 3 by 3 inches is usually standard. And because I'm cutting this out for a small size, I'm making use of this 3 by 3 inches. Okay, now I connected this into the shoulder slope and then connected to the chest line. Now, next thing I want to do is place my tape on the shoulder line again and mark down to the bust point 10 inches, and then from the shoulder again down to the length of the top 14 inches. Now this person do not really have bust, so I'm ending it on the 14 inches mark, which is going to be the length of the top, because the top will not actually get to the waistline. Okay, I hope you guys understand. Now I've went ahead to draw my lines across, and next on the chest line, I'm going to divide the busts by 4 and then mark it out. Now the bust circumference is 34. Now if I divide 34 by 4, I'm going to mark it down. Okay, now you will consider that this is a free top, so you'll be adding 1 inch for ease and then 1 inch for sewing allowance. So I added 2 inches extra. I'll repeat the same thing to the bust point, and on the waistline, the waist is 31. I'm going to divide this 31 by 4, mark it down, plus 2 inches, which is for ease allowance and sewing allowance. Now on the armhole, I'm going to divide the armhole depth into two, mark it out, and then mark out the front armhole just like this. So next thing I want to do is add up my half an inch for the shoulder sewing allowance. After I add it up, I'm going to connect the points together and then cut this out. Okay, so you can see that the front is actually very simple. So go ahead and cut out the neck and then move over to the shoulder and then into the armhole and then the side. Now on the waistline, I'm going to add up 1 inch for hemming allowance. So if you want hemming allowance of 2 inches, go ahead and add it. If you equally want 1.5 inches, go ahead and add it up. Now that I'm done cutting out the front, I'm going to move over to the back. So I've folded my fabric into two again. The first thing I'm going to do is from the center fold of the fabric, I'm going to come in by 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance. And then I'm going to connect it vertically. Now, after that, I'll go ahead and bring in the front and place it right after the zipper allowance. And the first thing I'm going to do is mark out the shoulder line. Now, after marking out the shoulder line, I'm going to, from the shoulder line, go down by 1 inch for the neck depth. Okay. And of course, the width of the neck is going to remain the same. Now, I'm going to equally mark out the armhole depths so that I'll be able to connect the back armhole. Okay. So after that, I'll equally add half an inch for shoulder sewing allowance, and as you can see, I'm cutting this out already. Now after this, next thing we want to do is modify the zipper allowance because we don't want any form of zip bulge at the back. Okay, so I'm going to go in by half an inch and then connect it to the neckline again and then cut it out. So you can see I'm trying to cut it out, and now that I'm done, I'm going to notch my zipper allowance. So guys, as you can see, we are done with both the front and the back. So you can see I have my front and I have my back. Now I'm going to fold in my fabric, so I'll cut out the facing. If you want to make use of bias, you can make use of ready-made bias, or you can actually form your own bias with this fabric. Now, first of all, I've folded my fabric into two, and from the center fold, I'm going to cut out the neckline and the shoulder. And this type of facing is going to enter into the armhole. Okay, so I've gone ahead to cut out the armhole. Next thing I want to do is determine how deep I want the facing. Okay, and I went ahead to cut it. I think I used 4 inches. Okay, after the neckline. Yeah, that is what I use. So as you can see, I have my front facing. So I'm going to show you how to place it. So you are going to have to place it right side facing the right side of the actual front. Okay, and then pin it up. Now we are moving over to the back facing. So I'm going to make use of just one piece of the back to do that. And now again, I'm going to place in my fabric, and then I'm going to ensure that the length of the yoke of the back and the front remains the same. So that is what you can see me trying to measure out. And when I'm satisfied with what I have, I'm going to cut out the neckline, the shoulder, and then the armhole. So remember, we are trying to cut out the back yoke. Okay. Now after that, I'm going to raise up the actual piece and then cut out the lengths. Now, after cutting out the length, remember that we place this on fold. So go ahead and slash it open. So you have two pieces for the facing. Okay, and remember to note the wrong part. And the next thing I'll be doing now is pin up this facing onto each of the back pieces. Okay, making sure that the right sides are facing each other. So you guys, you can see we are done, and this is our knicker and this is the upper part. I hope you found value in this tutorial. In my next tutorial, I'll be sharing with you guys how to join these pieces together. Until then, bye.